Welcome back to Vice Grip Garage. We're working on our 1974 Monte Carlo. We're building it to look like a 70s NASCAR. And I've got my good friend Chad here and my brother Sean. Our goal is to have this thing painted with epoxy primer by early AM, technically tomorrow. But there is a tremendous amount of work to do. We've still got to lock the rear end, plus we have a ton of metal work and Bondo body filler work to be done. So pitter, patter, let's get at her. So basically we've decided the best way to do this is to, we're going to divide and conquer. I'm going to continue on all of the metal work, so cutting out all of the rust and rot, making and putting in patch panels, grinding and making sure all that is ready for body filler. Sean's going to do all of the body filler and just focus on that. And then Chad's going around and putting 220 down on pretty much everything, plus all of the finite sanding that my phalanges just won't do anymore. There's a ton of hand sanding to do around the nose cone, and there's some rubber and fiberglass pieces on this car as well that need the hand sand attention. So he's going to take that head on. Hopefully, like we say, late tonight we can get this thing primered, but we'll have to really, really thrash to get that done. I'm going to start up here on the fenders. So that one's all finished up. Working on this one over here, just kind of wanted to show you what it looks like underneath. Prepping it right now. Made my measurements, trimmed everything up, and this is not the right year. So only the bottom part actually works. It's a bigger piece. And I had to trim the bottom to get this to sit in here correctly, but how I like to do these patches is I'll get them to fit in, just hack off the bottom wherever's rusty. And you can see my screw marks. I hold them in place and then I cut both pieces at once. So now I'm positive that this cut is going to match perfectly fine here. Hit this with the cheek poker, sanded her down with the circular, sanding wheels and whatnot. Hit her with some rust fix, letting that dry, and then I'll primer it. And then priming the inside of the panels as well. It doesn't have to look pretty, just get something on it. Doesn't make sense to replace this and just have it rusted from the inner side out again. Get this here welded in, and then we can move on to the back. Thankfully, the rest of the panels showed up. These are the rears, of course. I only need the bottom sections, but no one really makes these, and these are banged up. Big dent here. But I don't need to get that high. This one also is really banged up. Normally stuff you'd return, but again, this is unobtainium. Doesn't really exist out there. And then these are the patches we need. In front of the tires, we need this section right here. And then of course I'll hang on to this metal. Never know if we're gonna need it or something like that. Guy went ahead and zipped in a support screw down here, and that keeps this body line as close as I can. And then you can see how tight that gap is then when you overlap and cut them. Got her tacked in, got this worked around. So just gonna finish welding her in, and then we can finally move on to the rear quarters down there. Captain side fender, that's done. Moving on to something a little bit different here. Now to fill up 70s rigs, especially GM stuff, flip up the license plate. There she is. It's right there, But if we're gonna go full NASCAR look on this thing, we gotta get a fuel door on the side over here. And you can see I got one drewed up. And I did a lot of research on this, and it seems like most of them were where this marker was, or even some were back here. And I don't wanna go that far. I'm thinking right about here, and that's also gonna work good. I'm thinking forward to the wrap here on the lettering and stuff that we have coming up. And I'm hoping, looking at that design, that this doesn't impede on any of that. And I don't really like it much farther back or forward. This is pretty well centered over the trunk there. Now real NASCARs today have like a bubble valve. It's like a springed relief thing where you could shoot the juice can in and it does stuff. And I'm sure they had something similar back in the old days. I'm not going to spend that kind of money for a real one. This is actually for a fuel cell, but it gives me that kind of aircraft, industrial, race car look that I'm going for. So this is going to go like that. I think it's going to look pretty darn good, and this was the most inexpensive way that I could do that. I flipped it around, traced the outside out, and then I found a piston installer, which just happened to be a 4-inch bore, and then drew that up there, of course. Now what I'm going to do is just take the lightning scissor over here and just boop, knock that thing out. And then I went over a couple ideas how we're going to fasten this. Pop rivets. There's those insert thingies that you squeeze in there, and I got the bolts, and there's a couple other ideas. But what I'm going to do is actually just use self-tappers, because it's going to give us that bolt head. Plus, I don't have to drill or do any other work. I mean, it's the lazy, easy, cheap way to go, but not very good at freehanding circles with this thing, but that ought to work, maybe. I guess we could try it. Yeah, there we go. And then when the wrap's on and we're done, like I say, we'll just come around with some self-tappers, secure that in, and bingo, fuel door. So we're about to dig into the rear end here. Yeah, what we're gonna do is just do it the cheap way, because that's the right way, right? And we'll put a mini spool in there. There's a full spool, which is like a tube that connects both axle shafts together and bolts to the ring gear. And what we're gonna do is just a little chunk, takes out the spider gears basically and replaces that, and makes both wheels spin at the same time. Horrible on tires, like if you're turning, because the outside tire is spinning faster and when you're turning, and just scrubs them up. But this is the issue we're having right now. Drinker side, well, she's bald because I slipped on the accelerator a couple times. And captain side, darn near brand new. Well, that's not gonna work running down the drag tracks. We gotta fix that. Pleasant surprise, we busted these off. We got lots of shoe left on both sides, and we still have colors and all the springs. The hardware has clearly been replaced at some point. I know I didn't do it, but I mean, galvanized, colorish, even still in here, so fixed, rebuilt, that's good. Drums look, you know, good enough. So we're gonna pop the diff cover off and hope that I just happen to have the right mini spool in stock.
If not, I say we weld it.
Or we can link and lock it. We got the equipment to do that too, so. Oh, it's seated pretty good. That might never been opened before.
Boy.
Give it a hit. Yeah! See? Well,
I moved stuff around and it got bad.
Yeah, it's definitely never been. Look at that.
Oh
it's
my
like,
God, it's like sludge.
tar coming out of the back. What's
There's
it
something
smell?
in there.
What's it smell like?
I couldn't even give you a smell. So we pulled the cover off and we figured we'd make sure what gear ratio we had in the car here. And it's usually stamped right here on your pinion gear or your ring gear. And this one is 1541. So what you do is you divide 41 by 15. And on this car, it ended up being a 273. So long gear for this old supercharged pony here.
It is. And if you're not familiar with gearing, a 308 is like the most heard of common highway gear. 273 is far extreme. This thing would probably run 100 without even breaking a sweat.
She's a grocery getter.
Yeah, but accelerationals, not good. And that's why it does such good burnouts. You get it standing on the brake in first gear, drop it in the second, drop the hammer, and this thing would lay patch for eons. But it's not going to be good for drag racing, but I think we're going to leave it because, like I'm saying, this would be nice to have or fun to have as a daily driver. And having a taller gear where I can run down the interstate and pass people 75, 80, get decent fuel mileage, probably beats a 373 or a 411, because I'm not going to be doing stoplight drag racing or anything like that. So
Well, why not?
well, I mean, I'd like to, but you can't have both, right? So
Right.
So what we're gonna do now, there's a little bolt that's gonna knock that pin out. Once we slide that pin out, those spider gears just fall out basically. Then there's C-clips. We're gonna pull these axle shafts out. We'll put that mini spool in, slide the axle shafts back in. We gotta grind the clips to where they fit back into that. There's like a boss where they slide in, and then that's gonna lock both of these together there. It's, other than actually welding it, it's the cheapest way to do it. And you're pretty certain that way that if something breaks, it's gonna be twisting an axle shaft, or this just goes kapoof. Whereas a Lincoln locker, usually your welds fail for one reason or another. And then that just goes through and strips out your pinion gear and your ring gear and stuff like that. So
It's also an excuse just to put some 410s in it and drag race it, huh?
right, re-gear it, yeah. So now we'll pop them out and check if they're a 28 spline, which they should be. Maybe they're a 30 spline, not sure, most likely not. And then we'll dig through my inventory back here, and hopefully I've got something. I had some questions on this last time I did it, so I wanted to show this in detail. This one is pushed in, this one is not. So if I reach out here and push that axle shaft in, that's the C-clip. That is literally the only thing that holds this axle shaft in place. Now that'll slide out just like that. This clip's already off. That side comes out. There we go.
Whammy.
Just like that. Now that spool takes the place of all this stuff, like I'm saying. And you know, there's science involved and other stuff, and it locks her up.
We had to grind these old C-clips. So we had to grind the old C-clips down because they were rounded. Well, with this new mini spool, there's a square insert here. So took them to the bench grinder and, you know, redneck made them fit.
That's all in there now. And if we turn the drive shaft, if I could try, there we go. You can see both axle shafts now turn in unison. Boom. We got positivization tractionals in the rear. We're gonna clean up the diff cover and paint it some obnoxious color because, you know, performance. And this is rebuilt and expensive. Wish I had chrome, but we don't. Maybe Chevy orange or something?
I was thinking Chevy orange for sure.
Well, this is back together, and clearly you could see this is all rebuilt. The 10 bolt is now a 12 bolt, you know, new brakes and drums and stuff. Also dropped in a new fuel tank, and by that I mean and the frame is completely redone as well. That's rubberized undercoating from Duplicolor, and this is just that DE 1635 and whatnot. So we've got the list knocked down. All the little things are pretty much done, but now we're left with patching up the body, and these are the big guys. That's going to take quite a bit of time. And then while I'm doing that, Sean's going to start working on the filler. He just did a frame off on his pickup, and well, you can see his pants full of body filler. He's pretty much used to that now. So he could start filling in up front and probably work back and forth 20-30 minutes, I think, is the flash on that stuff or something like that. And then I'm going to try to get both of these front ones done first, and then I can move and get out of his way, and then he can start working on this. And after that's done, then it's just 400 grit everything, start doing some touch-ups. We got to just put some glaze on a lot of these little, like, where the studs were and things like that. And then hopefully we could be primering here in the next day. Well, we basically have to get this project done on time.
So what I found when I was doing my pickup is that if you use that cheaper Bondo, it leaves a lot of pinholing in it, and you can never get it smooth unless you put a glaze coat on it. But if you use this better stuff, you get a little bit of pinholes here and there, but it's not so much like Bondo. And it adheres better, and
Right.
it's just a better product.
And that, like, better, right? But that was still only like $58
Yeah,
at
I
Summit.
mean, for a whole gallon, I mean, that's pretty cheap.
So what I'm doing right now, I'm just gonna hack off this bottom piece here and get rid of it. And I'm just separating the seam where it overlaps here. We wanna retain the inside piece. This is where we're gonna try to drill holes and tack weld it in with some seam sealer. And then we'll put a new piece on here, screw it in, and then we're gonna double cut again. So we're gonna cut through both pieces at the same time, and then we'll do a butt weld across here. Unfortunately, I have to hack up this NOS piece. Feel bad for doing it, but I don't have any options, so I only need this chunk. So if anybody else out there needs this piece right here, I know how hard they are to find, trust me. And if you need it, let me know. Got this side stitched in. It's fitting okay-ish on the door jamb side. Unfortunately, this is a, what did I call it, a 75, 76 panel, so it was a lot wider. So I had to use the torch, and basically I stretched it and rolled my own edge and tried to get those lined up. I'll show you when I'm finished. Right now it's kind of a mess. Sean's on his, like, what, third coat now? Maybe?
Yeah, third on this here.
And the other side, two or three, two?
Two on that one.
This side's all finished up over here. I just focused mainly on getting this side correct and this body line here and getting this sat in flush and make that door gap look nice. I get some seam sealer in here and that'll finish that. So using a torch and some vice grips and a hammer, we stretched it out and rolled it and shortened it up so that it would line up here. So gonna need a little bit of mud in here where kept burning holes in this metal. Unfortunately, I should have went a little bit higher. I guess there was some rot behind there, but it's pretty decent. This shouldn't be that bad at all. I'm gonna switch over to the other side and do the same thing. This side over here literally had a full mouse apartment in here. I'll be dipped. Well, more bad news, fellers. This piece here says 76 to 77, but I was told that it would work for a patch panel here, not even remotely close. This is different. All of this is different. This is close-ish. So I can't use it to replace this whole piece with the bottom down here. However, we discovered that the roll of the metal up where my hand is here has the correct kind of cup and shape that we could probably use down here. So I'm gonna have to do this in a few different steps. I wanted to get rid of these marker lights anyway. I was just gonna fill them in and then Bondo over it and get rid of this side marker light because, you know, race car stuff. But I think what I'm gonna do is hack this chunk out, use it as a template, get my piece out of here, try to weld this back in, and hopefully I don't have to chase rotten metal all the way around this here. And then we're gonna have to try to recreate a lip over here, which is extremely time consuming. I actually just finished doing that here and here. This is all weld. This is all rotted in here. So it's just 3, 4, 5 passes with the welder and just taking it really slow. I'm gonna have to do that on the end. I could also try to just snip a piece out of this and snag it up and lava staff it in up here, but I don't know, there's really nothing to attach anything to. So about a 2-hour job just ended up being probably 6, 7, or 13. Great. So this piece here is going to be really difficult to do without this warping from heat, either from welding or cleaning up the weld. It's a long distance here. So what I'm going to do is run a back strap in here. And not only is that going to give us some support to help keep this from waving, but it gives me this lip here that I can press the patch panel against and make sure that we're getting flush to this panel. Drill these holes, just gonna spot weld all the way down, then we'll grind those smooth. Gonna hit this with some weldable primer, get this in first, and then I got a piece that's pretty close to what I think I need to get in here. And then the hard part is gonna be reconstructing this whole corner unit here. She's all lightning staffed in, and I think we might be okay. You can see we've got that nice curve coming back around. It's curved correctly this way. So now this one, I'm just gonna really take my time. I'm actually just letting it cool right now. Jump around as far as possible. Even if you go from like here to here, you're just dragging that heat along, and that's what's gonna cause this to warp. So move around as much as possible. Normally I air quench this, but Sean's been working with me and running the air the whole time. So I'm just going at a slower pace, taking my time, and then we'll be able to use less mud, hopefully. We got about a half gallon left, and I think all of that is gonna be needed for the quarter panels, basically. This one turned out really nice, actually. There's gonna be hardly any mud there, but we got the other side yet, and both rears to do. That didn't sound right.
Really
Good.
hurt my foot. Yeah. Oh, you gotta wear steel toes, man. Why is that so heavy?
Is that a spacer?
It's all steel in there.
Now we got to get the rubber doodabber off, which is a lot of fun, Chad and I found out. But this one, he made a good point, might not be as rusted and rotten as the other one because the back tires are shooting stuff into the bumper.
Chad, what's your plan of attack on this?
Yeah.
This side's patched up. Sean can come over now and lay some filler in, and I'm going to swing over to the other side and basically do the same exact thing. Well, it's currently just a tickle after 1 a.m. Last night we shut down at 2, the night before that, 3 a.m. We're just gonna call this a night and have a couple cold snacks to get back on in the morning early. But we got a lot done. We have some filler left to do here. All the metal work is done, but basically everything else is pretty much there. Chad's running around and touching everything up with 400. We have a couple little things like a dent here. We got to fill the emblem there. There's a couple pieces on the back of the car. But the plan is tomorrow afternoon, because it's the hottest temperature we're going to have in the next week, is get this thing under primer in the afternoon. We got a little bit of a touch up there. We got to fix this, sand it down, repair that. But other than that, it's there as far as body work. Now I've got a black matte finished filler primer. Goes on very, very thick. We'll have to sand that afterwards, but that'll cover a lot of the small imperfections. So you don't have to go chase this thing around with glaze or anything like that. And it hides quite a bit. Actually a pretty solid car. I know this looks like a lot of filler, but really if you think about it, a 74, it's not bad at all. So we'll see you guys in a handful of hours here. So unfortunately, the drinker side floor is pretty well shot. That's the hole that I saw from underneath, but once we wire wheeled everything, it really starts picking up these scales, and it's really pinholed and soft. We found a hole up there, and I'm almost positive what happened is water kept coming in and then would pool and just sit over here on the passenger floor, because the rest of the floors are absolutely perfect. So it's just this corner over here. So what we're gonna do is just cut a big piece here and lay it down, get it kind of molded in there. and then we'll pull it back out, flip that piece over, seam seal the edge all the way around it, plop it down. That way when water gets up, it doesn't move around in the car, and then we're going to self-tap and be done. It needs a floor pan, but that's a tremendous amount of work, and we're not prepared to do that. So it'll work for now, and someday we can always come back and put an actual pan in, but this is going to get us on the road and to that event. We're getting really close to cleaning this thing up, wiping it down, and putting some color on it. Got the door jambs in already. That's just a Duplicolor white spray paint actually, and it's gonna match really well with the livery, I think, but we'll see what happens. It actually turned out really good for, I mean, $5 or whatever. We got a couple more little tricky spots here. Got some of those pits where that trim was coming around. They're just the devil to get right. And Sean is OCD on some of the stuff, which is great. He's a good body guy, so he goes over and over and over till it's right. Got this little part here, and this guy and that guy, and I think we're dialed in. Chad's working on some of the little nuances around the trim, making sure that we can get new color in here if it's built up with the primer and the old color. Sometimes it doesn't seat when you go into spray because you can't dig it in, you're going to get a run. So you got to kind of feather that in. Most of it's taped off, but we've got to get all this cleaned up, swept out, blown out, get the lift wiped down. We got to wipe the car down. It's quite a bit of work. We got to probably, honestly, an hour, hour and a half of prep before we can actually even start painting. But car is pretty much dialed. A tremendous amount of work. Huge thank you to Chad and Sean. We were doing the math earlier, laughing. I think we're north of 200 hours on this project now, all together with the engine and rear end and stuff like that. But it went from a scuff and shoot, let's just get it done and have fun, to this is going to be absolutely amazing when it's done. It's going to be a lot of fun. We had to move the lift out here. I got a couple leaks in the barn here, and it was coming down on the hood, so we got a position where we think it could not get dripped on, but we just, I don't know. We don't know yet. We got a couple ankle burners running. It's pretty cool, but we're gonna try to warm it up to what we can. Of course, 65, 70 is ideal, but this is still pretty cool to touch, so we'll just do our best. Right now, the guys are running around, wiping it down. We're using a wax and grease remover thing, but you can use earth ghost juice or whatever you want, paint thinner. Just make sure to get it nice and clean. And then right before we spray, we'll wipe it down with some tack cloths and then get on it. We've only got a gallon, so the strategy is hit the Bondo first, or the filler, get a coat on that, and then of course start on the roof and the hood, trunk, work our way down. Goes pretty quick. Once you get into it, we're going to mix the full gallon up at one time so we can just keep the gun full. So as far as equipment goes, I'm just using this North Star compressor from, I think it's from Northern Tool, setting that to 90. And this is a similar gun if you watch the $119 paint job. I think it was a CC500, which is for colors and clear coats. This is a P500, which is basically for primer. And it's got a larger tip. This is a 1.7 tip for primers and epoxies and things like that. And then I got all this from Summit. It's really affordable. This is just a DTM epoxy primer. It's flat black. It's a heavy filler, basically. This is a catalyst for it. And then they have a paint, I think it's like a starter kit or get them going box or something like that. But it's got mixer uppers in it, sticks. This is the filters. It's even got a couple cheesy gloves in there. but that was super cheap, so I picked that up as well. But this is pretty much it. I think this was like 50 bucks or something like that. But on the gun here on the bottom, we got a regulator. We're gonna set that to about 20, and then we'll try to control it up here on the top end. And then this is just another water separator. I have one coming right off the compressor, and we're also gonna drain the compressor and that water separator before we start, and hopefully this will catch any other moisture so it doesn't, you know, shoot out. This is where a digital paint mixolator would come in handy. This has been obviously sitting a while and is gonna take, probably 20 minutes of just this. That's great. So just hitting that filler first. That's the color, obviously. It's gonna be like a matte black. This is why you hit it first. That really soaks in a lot of that, whatever product you're gonna put on it. So kind of just moving around the car. Gonna get that in first. And now I'll get a little step stool, do the roof, hood, and trunk on the next cup, and then we'll start trying to blend some of this stuff in. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect. We just wanted the body work to be nice and smooth and flush. So when we put that shiny wrap on, it's gonna look great. Well, the guy got done laying that primer down about 3 a.m. this morning. It's sometime 12:09 or noonish o'clock currently, and it's just about dry to touch, so we're gearing up to get back to work on this thing. Car looks fantastic. However, that material didn't cover quite as good as I was hoping. And what I mean by that is all of the filler shows. So it's soaked in that product a lot, so you can see all of the filler throughout the car. It needs another 2 to 3 coats. You've probably been hearing the rain off and on. It's sleeting, kind of snowing, but through the night it rained a tremendous amount, and unfortunately really got into the sail panels in a couple different spots. I mean, it's just a pole shed, right? And it leaks quite a bit, unfortunately, so it's gotten all over the car. That's another reason I want to wait if I'm going to do another 2 to 3 coats. Let's pick a day that it's not raining cats and kittens so we can get a nicer finish down. I am going to throw the tires on really quick and get this thing down on all 4 paws. That way it's not so high on the lift since we're going to be crawling in and out. Saving some money reusing the same wheel, but the rules say you have to have some sort of drag radial or slick compound to run down the track. So I went with this Nitto. It's a T555R2, and it's DOT, but it's a competition drag radial. So this will be perfect for us. I'm going to throw these on it for now. We'll only use these at the track, and then we have another set of tires and wheels we're putting together that will stay on the car as general use. Those are on, look nice, fit the wheel well good. There's some of that filler, you can kind of see it shooting out at your teeth. Not a big deal, fellers. We'll get that covered up with another 2 to 3 coats. And it has a lot to do with the fact I was spraying at 30 degrees out here, but I just didn't have any options. It's just the way it is. Well, we did miss a handful of dings on the rig, but let me tell you what, fellers and fellettes, we legitimately did probably 2 to 3 weeks of body work on this car in just a few days. And I'm okay with some dings in this thing. It's going to get dinged up anyway, right? And end of day, it's all going underneath the wrap. The biggest, most important thing is we got all of the rust and rot out before we put that wrap over this thing. and seal it up. Now you're going to want to stay tuned. Coming up real quick here, we're going to bend our own roll cage and put that in the car here, get the seats and belts in and start tidying this thing up. We're nearing the finish line here, but there's still a lot of work to do. Thanks guys for watching. Appreciate it very much. We'll see you next time.